Well, hey everybody, good evening. It is day 5 of Cultivating Watercolor Confidence. I'm Jill. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Come on in. I know some folks are coming in. Let me get my little chat window open here so that I make sure that I see you. Come on in. Let us know that you're here. Fantastic. Somebody's saying, I'm finally here for a live. Wonderful. I'm so glad. I know the schedule, it's everybody's got something different going on, and that's totally fine. The evening slot that we have here in Yellowstone just kind of works out that way because I only get like 1 hour, and that's the hour I get, and so we had to sort of like it or lump it, right? So usually when I'm back east in an Eastern time zone, I do lives in the afternoon or a little bit earlier in the day. So anyway, there's been some good things about having it a little bit later. So anyway, welcome everybody. Come on in. We've got a big painting day today. So while some of you are still working your way in, come on in. I want to just applaud you for sharing in the Facebook group. I've seen so many posts with your creative spaces and kind of talking about your creative spaces. Everybody's been kind of coming in and commenting and liking and even offering suggestions on different things and whatnot. So that's just fantastic. I love it. I love for everybody to get to share and share ideas and all those good things, because that's super important, and having a community of painters to share that with is always fun, and I hope that you have felt safe and comfortable and inspired by sharing in the group here. I think we've got a great group of folks here, so awesome. All right, well, we're going to get started on the painting this evening. You will have gotten, you should be getting some emails, and the reference photo for this evening is the trees that you see here, and there's a copy of it in the Facebook group, and then you should be seeing those in your emails, in your email as well. And today, in fact, when the email went out, there was a couple of emails actually that went out. The membership enrollment for my membership is actually open right now. This whole workshop, this whole training is sort of a free offering that I like to do every time I start to have an enrollment period, so that everybody can just kind of get a little sample of what it is that we do and what it's like to work with me and that type of thing. So if you are enjoying this program and have found that you are inspired and feeling encouraged about this whole idea of looking for an instructor, because I really think you need one. We all do. We all need an instructor. In fact, I'm shopping for 2 different workshops right now that I'm going to be signing up for this year. So even if it's not me, I urge you to please go find the mentor or instructor that's going to be just right for you. You need that structure so that everything you're working on is building to a goal, and not just sort of hit and miss one-off lessons that are not really related and helping you build and grow. Okay, so I want to encourage you with that. It's super important. So I think we've got enough folks in here. Let's see. Elizabeth was, there's somebody mentioning that I think they printed Elizabeth printed her reference image out, and maybe the ink is a little bit off. Yeah, that's totally up to you, however you want to handle that. Make sure I like to I just work off of my phone, or I've got my laptop is over here off camera so that I can see what the image is and while I'm working. So kind of do whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so let's get started, and we're just going to handle this just like we do any type of demo that I'm doing in my membership. And we're just going to start talking about the photo first, and let's develop a game plan, talk about what our objectives here should be for this particular photo. So I really like all of this beautiful, vivid springtime green, summertime green, and we want to be careful. We talked about this in the little monochromatic cottage that we did on day 3. And there was a lot of dark value happening in that particular photo, and the photo sort of captured it that way. But we as artists, we've got to really look at the scene or look at the photo and think about it as a scene and decide, there should probably be some values that need to be lightened up just a little bit to really demonstrate that sense of depth and perspective, and that there are things off in the distance, and they probably don't need to be quite as dark. So when we look at the photo that we're working with right here, the darkest values that we have are the tree trunks. There's some modeling of color in there, but those darker values in the tree trunks, the shadows that are made across the lawn, and then even if you look at, let's see, let me see if I can, I'm going to get myself off of the picture for just a second. Just for a second. All right, so if you look out in the distance, there's that row of narrow trees, like a band of trees that go off in the background. And what I like about those trees that are back there, they're sort of, they kind of start out a little bit taller over on the left-hand side of the on the left-hand side of the photo, and then they recede and get smaller and thinner, as they start to recede off into the distance. But what's interesting in the photo, that back row of trees is the same dark value, the same intensity of darkness as those dark values that are much, much closer to us. So the photo gets away with it, but when we do that in our paintings, we totally collapse all of that space, from the foreground to the midground, all the way back there in the background. So we're just going to modify some of those values as we go. I'll talk about it as I'm doing it, and I'm going to use a lot of some different brushwork technique to sort of handle that foliage. And I'm going to be using specific colors on my palette that I know are going to granulate to give me some of that sort of that leafy, some visual texture, okay, so that I'm not, we don't want to be in there painting every little leaf, that type of thing. So, all right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch the camera angle up here just a little bit. I'm going to go to my work area, but also have the photo up in the top right for just a second while I'm sort of sketching through this. All right, so let's kind of talk about the sketch as we're going. I'm kind of tilting my board just a little bit, by the way, just so that I don't kind of get anything skewed. So I can see that, I've got this rolling lawn that's sort of happening, and so I'm just trying to get that in there, and it kind of just goes off into the distance, but I do have this little bit of an angle. And then I want to be real careful with scale. There's a lot of trees back there. They're big tall trees, but because they're so far away, we've got a lot of I've got to mind my scale and keep those really nice and small across here. And it seems like as they sort of make their way across, they get a little bit bigger over here, a little bit taller over here on the left-hand side. There is sort of a little distant mountain range that I can see kind of out there. I don't think I'm so much worried about that right now. I might just sort of toss that in there when I get to the point of just adding my sky values in there. All right, so I'm going to start working on this tree by actually establishing a position for these trunks. These trees are absolutely massive, just really gorgeous. And I want to just establish where the trunks are. I'm not worried about the foliage right now. Just kind of getting a basic shape. And if you think about it, I don't want to overdo these trees. I don't want to get them too detailed and all that kind of thing. They really, they almost are like a silhouetted. If you want to think about it, they're backlit a little bit somewhat. And so I'm just kind of treating them that way. Ultimately will be my sort of goal here on this. So I'm just sketching these in. And, depending on what kind of watercolor instruction you have been working with in the past, I do a lot of drawing, okay? I have a very strong drawing background, and so if you're used to doing work or enjoy following tutorials that are more just sort of fluid and more about playing with the medium, more so than, capturing shapes and that type of thing. That's totally fine, but I will definitely tend to be, more on the drawing side of things. So if that interests you, it's kind of hard to find that these days without taking some really expensive courses from, some really expensive painters. So I like to be able to offer that for folks because I think it's really important. All right, so what I did, I just sort of in the trunks of each of those trees as I drew them, I went in and just erased the little row of, those distant trees that had kind of gotten drawn in there. And, when I think about it, that's about all of the tree trunk that I'm seeing. There might be, let's see, let me look closely. There might be just a little bit more. There's a little bit of a space right here. They're just kind of, I'm making just a silhouette. So the little cluster of tree trunks was probably the hardest thing to draw in this. I'm going to hold it up just so that you can see what I've done here in sort of copying the shapes of those tree trunks. And see how I've almost connected them together? They're like, I'm just going to make them as like a silhouette. I'm not going to try to, keep them separate from one another. And then as far as all this foliage goes, I'm kind of just using my pencil to sort of go around and basically make like a little outline to sort of capture the sort of the shape, just the outside sort of contour shape of this mass of foliage. And that's exactly how I'm going to treat all this foliage too, is just as one big mass of multicolored greens. We're going to have fun with it and allow all of these different colors of green to come in and do what they do. It's going to be fun. Some of these little clumps of leaves actually sort of bite into the tree, into the tree trunks. I'm just kind of making a little indication of those little spots where that might be happening. And believe it or not, that's all that I'm going to draw for the canopy of leaves. You can see that I just created like a little contour outline that just sort of gives me a boundary, gives me a guideline to follow, where to start putting all of these greens and whatnot. Let's see, I had a little stray mark there. All right, so again, I didn't mention it at the top of the broadcast, but I am using my Arches 140-pound cold press paper, just using a little technical pencil. And if you'll notice, there are shadows that are casting across the lawn. Beautiful, love those. I'm not going to draw them, however. I'm just going to allow myself to just paint those in as I go. I'm also sort of erasing the lawn, the line that was made sort of at the bottom of each of those trunks. I'm erasing that out. We want to keep this nice and loose. And one of the things that I have found over time that really, I think, captures or capitalizes on the style of painting that I do is that, I enjoy having this, this idea of making sure that I have taken some time on the drawing, even though this is not like a super detailed drawing by any means. I've just sort of captured a few really important outlines. So I've spent some time on the drawing, and then that becomes a really solid structure for me to have a really nice loose brushwork, because I know kind of where my boundaries are. It's like I can just hit the ball as hard as I want to, and it's never going to roll away because a fence is there to let me know where the boundaries are. So, it's I think for me, for my style and the way that I kind of teach it, I like to have a little bit of structure going into the painting, and now I'm free to just kind of just let the color sort of go where it wants to. All right, so let's talk about our strategy for moving into getting into the color here. When I look at the painting, anytime I'm working with a watercolor, I try to work the farthest away first, and that's going to be some of that sky area. It's a really pale blue. So I'll probably put a little bit of that in there. But then when I start working the greens in the tree and in the lawn, because they're so similar, I'm going to start kind of doing all of those greens a little bit at the same time. And I'm going to start with all of my lightest, brightest greens first, okay? And then gradually build into some middle tones, and then polish everything off with some darker tones. So if you're an acrylic or oil painter out there, it's a little bit opposite, okay? You can let me know if I've got, you know, how many of you are actually oil painters out there, or, you know, work with some sort of opaque medium. You know, you start with all your darks first, and then you top off with all the highlights, and it's totally the reverse with watercolor. All right, so I think what I'll do when we get started with the painting here, I'm going to go ahead and start with whoopsie, I'm going to start with the yeah, here we go. I want to get the picture in there so that you're seeing the picture and the painting at the same time. So I'm just using my number 12 round brush, and I'm coming in here and just sort of wetting this area that is the sky. Okay, I'm just kind of adding a little bit of water in there, and it's lighter. I'm seeing some sky over here on this side, and there might be a few little bits of it here and there, maybe some little spots that are showing through the tree. You can see I'm not being super fussy with this. I'm using a phthalo blue for my sky, and you might think, if you've never painted phthalo blue before, you know it's, or if you have used phthalo blue before, you know it's a really intense blue. And actually, let me scooch, let me change the size of the painting for just a sec, or the, excuse me, the size of the little photo. It's a little bit too big and it's covering up everything. And I think I'm also going to put it over here. Let's do it this way. Sorry about that. Let's try it that way. Okay, there we go. All right, so just a little bit of this blue coming in here. And phthalo blue is a real intense color, but I'm just really only adding a little bit of water to it, a little bit of pigment, not a whole lot of the pigment, because I don't want it to be an intense blue. This is a nice soft blue, and just kind of getting that in there, kind of putting it in there very loosely. Anywhere that I might think that I want to see a little bit of that blue sky sort of peeking through, I'm just going to get it in there. And that's pretty much it for the sky. I'll come back and work on these distant trees in just a little bit, but just a little bit of blue. You can see how soft it is. Just a little bit of blue, tiny little bit. So whatever blue, if you don't have phthalo, that's totally fine. Cerulean is a really good one. If you're using something like, if you've got cobalt and ultramarine, use the cobalt because it's a little bit brighter. Just real quick, I'm just going to blast this with a little bit of heat, just for a sec. There we go. All right, now it's still, there's maybe a little bit of dampness, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't care if the colors sort of run together a little bit. All right, so I want to start with the lightest, brightest values of green that I see, and that's all these really bright, vivid greens, and I've got something perfect for that. It's a Daniel Smith color called Green Gold, and all my members out there, I know you probably have got it on your palette by now, but I'm starting with a little bit of that, and I'm just going to use it actually right out of the tube to begin with. So I'm going to start working that into my painting here and putting that gold, putting this green gold everywhere I'm seeing it in the painting, or in the photo. I'm going right over this area. There's going to be some dark shadows that come later, but they're dark, so they're going to go right over top of that. And in the foreground, I've got this beautiful color called undersea green. It's another Daniel Smith, but it likes to granulate, and it's just got some nice sort of darker tones in it. I'm going to put that right there in the foreground. And I'm just not overworking things too much. Taking some of this green that's really vivid, so I want to kind of tone it down just a tiny little bit. I'm actually going to put a little bit of my pink into it just to tone it down. And I didn't add red to it because the red's a little bit too intense. I just wanted to soften it a little bit for some of these greens that are out there in the distance a little bit. I am sort of skipping over my tree trunks a little bit just for this demo, for the sake of the demo, because I think it makes it a little bit easier for you to see where I'm at in the painting. Normally I might just sort of paint over those and it not be that big of a deal. All right, I'm going to get some more of that green gold, and now I'm going to go up into the tree. If you notice in the tree, lots of foliage, and a way that I like to paint foliage is with the belly of my brush. And so I've loaded it up with that really bright green gold, and I'm just I had a little bit too much water on my brush, so I'm just letting some of that wick out onto a paper towel. And I'm going to use the belly of my brush because it'll give me kind of just an irregular sort of pattern. Let me hold that up just so that you can see it. See the little scratchy, it's just kind of almost like a little dry brush technique. And using the belly of your brush is kind of nice for that, so that you don't get like a super smooth stroke. It's just kind of irregular, and that's kind of what we want. So the lightest color in these trees is this beautiful light green. That's where the light is really hitting it. So I'm trying to come through the tree and just hit some of those highlights where I see that it's, you know, the lightest, brightest kind of value. Another brush to use this technique with is a Chinese calligraphy brush. And often when I'm painting outside, in fact, every time I'm painting outside, I will usually use one of these. I just want to show it to you just so that you can see it. I won't use it for the demo, but the Chinese brush is, this is a good quality one, and it makes a nice point, you know, when I need that. But at the same time, it makes some nice irregular shapes like that. But for the purposes of our demo today, I'm just going to be using my regular brush, but with a kind of painting on the side, on the belly of the brush a little bit. All right, so I've got some of those really light values in there that were the brightest parts of the tree. Oopsie, I'm trying to get it into the screen without it getting blurry. So those bright, so we're just kind of splotching around just a little bit. All right, now I know that there's some darker values in there. I'm going to get into that undersea green. If you do not have a darker green like this, you can mix one using like your ultramarine and some yellow. But any darker green that you've got, I'm not pushing it super dark, because now I want to just kind of work on some of my medium values that I see in here. So now I'm coming back into the tree and skipping around these nice light spaces that I've created and looking to fill in some of these gaps with the darker colors that I'm seeing in here. And I am kind of using the tip of my brush a little bit more on this. It may be kind of a mixture of things, I'm not sure. Just a little bit of both. And, you know, having all of the different values in there, that's what really gives us that sense of form and shape and space, and that some leaves are a little closer to us, some leaves are a little bit farther away. This is how we achieve that with all those different values in there. So I'm looking at looking at the photo too, and I can see that there are the little tree trunks and whatnot in here. I'm actually just painting them green, even though they may be kind of blackish in the photo. I'm just working on just mostly paying attention to the value. The value is the most important part, not really the color. And there are also places where I see the tree trunks. They're going to get darker. I won't get into those just yet. All right, so I'm just kind of making my way around and just keeping a nice loose, rough edge to kind of emulate the shapes of those, all this foliage. It's such a rough, textured shape. And I might even take my spritz bottle, if you've got one. I'm just going to give a little spritz into it. Not a crazy lot of water, but just a little bit to start creating some visual texture. You can see that it starts to make little droplet shapes and that type of thing. I'm going to get a little bit darker now. I'm still using this same undersea green, so whatever sort of medium dark green that you might have, get a little bit of that, and then I'm actually going to throw a little bit of my ultramarine blue into it to push that even darker. I want this to be kind of dark, so I'm adding some blue to that green, and because it's got a nice cool tint to it, I'm going to get some of my sienna. This is a Quin sienna that I'm using, but you might have burnt sienna. That will work fine, and it just kind of neutralizes it a little bit. This is the even darker value of green. So now I'm really kind of going through the painting and looking for the darker shapes that I see. And notice I'm actually painting the trunks, the tree trunks. They're getting sort of assigned this dark green color as we go here. Now there's a lot of mottling in the bark and different things like that. I'm letting some of that white paper show through at the moment. And like we had mentioned before, if you would rather watch the painting first before jumping in there, highly recommend that. I always like, for me personally, if I'm watching a video especially, or even when I'm in a classroom situation, I watch the painter for as long as I possibly can to just try to glean and pay attention to what's being done before I ever try to go and emulate it myself. So don't feel like you're missing something or not doing it right if you want to hold out and come back and work on this stuff after the fact. Just kind of watch, hang out and just watch a little bit. Totally fine. So I'm just carrying this dark value. I'm chasing values. I like to say that often. If you've painted with me before, you will have heard that term. I'm just looking for where it's dark, I want to make it dark. Where it's light, I want to leave it light. And you can start to see some form happening in the in the tree. It begins to take on a little bit of shape and dimension. All right, I'm going to drop down to my smaller brush. This is my 1/4 inch dagger brush, and something similar would be like maybe a number 6 round. I'm just using it to sort of come in here and scribble a little bit on these tree trunks, because they are a little bit lighter down at the bottom, because the sun is sort of hitting it, and also the bark color in the tree is it's a little bit, there's some different variation in there too. I'm going to hold it up so you can see a little bit closer. See, I've just made some variation. They're not all just the same dark color. I've tried to tried to leave some of that lighter value, happening in the tree trunks as well. And notice that I've made the tree trunks just green, this dark green, because it's really the value that's the most important thing. I can take some of my Quin sienna, maybe a little bit of this ultramarine blue. I'm mixing them together to sort of make a brown. I can come in here and just sort of drop some of that in there, because it's even darker once you kind of start looking closely into the tree. This tree trunk is really dark. So I'm just, you might have like a burnt umber or something like that. If you're not comfortable with mixing right now, just use a dark brown, or take a brown and add something to it. As you start working with an instructor, you'll be able to get a lot more comfortable with color mixes and learning how to sort of work with that on the fly over time. And of course, the biggest thing you can do is to make sure that you're practicing a lot and often. And then I don't know what it is. I just see it. I'm just getting a little bit of orange. There's some sort of little orange colored leaves over here. I'm just sort of putting some orange over there. See how I just put it over there? I didn't have to really paint all of those leaves. I just know that the color is there. I'm going to get into a color that I have called Rare Green Earth. All of my members will be familiar with this. This is another Daniel Smith color. If you don't have it, it's fine. You can mix sort of something. It's just a greenish gray, but it's really transparent. It's just one of those perfect colors for establishing a tree line that's kind of off in the distance, but you want to still be able to tell that it's trees, but without it being too dark. And this is perfect for that. So I'm kind of going and grabbing that distant little tree line that was sort of hiding out there. It does have some darker value, but it's not as dark. You can see I'm not making it as dark as these darks that I have here. I'm just wetting my brush, a little bit of a damp brush, just to come in and kind of squiggle some of that background color around a little bit. When I get over here on this side, there are a few more green colors. I don't mind sort of dropping a few little greens in there. Some little shadows of green kind of floating around out there, and then it does get, this is in shadow over here, so it's got a little bit darker green. But right when it makes that break coming across here, it does get lighter. Keeping things very, very soft. Let me hold it up just so that you can see. You can see I'm keeping the brushwork very loose. We did a pretty structured little sketch, just to outline some things, but I'm keeping the brushwork really loose, but I know where to put it because of that framework, that it was there, and that just made everything so much better. All right, so I have, getting my bigger brush again, I want to make sure that I've kind of got all the greens in the lawn area that I want before I do those shadows, because they kind of sort of need to sit up on top. I think that green, I'm wanting it to be a little bit more vivid. I'm going to give myself just a little blast of that green across here. And I've also got some Hansa yellow. I like to use Hansa yellow because it's more transparent than cadmium yellow. But if you have cad yellow, it's totally fine. Just maybe mix a little bit more water with it. And then I'm just going to push this yellow up into the bottoms of the trees here, so that looks like that they're anchored into the grasses. See how they look like they're kind of sitting there like they belong? All right, this is really, really wet, and I would like to put those dark streaks of the shadows across here, but it's a little bit too wet. So I'm just going to give a little bit of air, hot air right here on the bottom for just a second. Okay, I did not dry that completely. There's a little bit of dampness there because I kind of want these lines when I paint these across here. I didn't draw these, so I'm just going to have to kind of be careful. I'm going to spend some time to just look at my painting for just a second. I need a little bit more pigment in there too. This was just sort of this muddy color. I'm just looking for a dark green, so you can arrive at it however you will like. I've got some rare green earth and some of this undersea green together, but it's just making a darker green so that I can kind of hit these shadows. And anytime you're doing some shadows like this, you want to make sure that you kind of get the color that you want to begin with, and then just get it into the page, kind of quickly and confidently, right? We want to make sure we don't have to come back in and fiddle with those shapes any more than we have to. Here we go. There's our little shadows. And so just using making sure that we've taken some time to adjust and know that that's the value we want to arrive at, and then just being confident with the brushwork to get in there and take care of it. All right, so I want to start working on some more of my darker values now. I feel like I've got everything that's light, everything that's medium. I kind of think I've got all that. Now I want to focus in on getting some of these darks in. So I have taken some time to mix up sort of this is a kind of a chocolatey brown. It's Quin Sienna plus some of my French ultramarine, and it's really just made a nice chocolatey kind of deep charcoal kind of gray. And so what I want to do is come into my painting and work on some of these areas where I see that there's some really nice dark value, that I want to grab that and make sure that I'm paying attention to where I'm looking. I don't want to just stick them anywhere because they really need to belong where they belong. So I want to be mindful and make sure that I'm looking in the right place when I get these in. And I love this little blast of the way that the pigment, I'll show it to you in just a second, as I'm getting this sort of painted, this little section right here. There was a wonderful little thing that happened with the yellow paint. It just sort of bled through and made this beautiful little, let's see if I can point it out to you. Right in here, it made just this beautiful little glowing thing, just like it is in the photo. The pigment just sort of bloomed and sort of bit into the tree just a little bit. I love those times, and most of the time I can achieve something like that if I will be patient and let the paint do its job, because it knows how to be watercolor way more than I know how to tell it to be watercolor. So it's just one of those things that we kind of have to learn how to do. So I'm coming into the painting and looking for some other places where I see sort of a little bit of tree trunk happening in a few places. So I'm chasing values here. I'm just looking for where it's dark. I want to make it dark. I just want to make sure that that's taken care of. There was one little spot where I've kind of lost my value just a little bit. I got too dark, and there's this beautiful little section where there's a light spot of light and whatnot coming in, and I have got it a little bit too dark. And anytime that happens, I just have to acknowledge that that's just sort of the way that the painting is going to look now at that point. And so I won't try to overfix, but I might try to recreate that same little glint of light somewhere else. So this the tree trunk was dark, but there was this nice little patch of light sort of poking out right there. It's kind of in the wrong place compared to the photo, but I'm just going to let that I'm just going to let that be. And you can see where I've left so much light, it really is looking like the light is just starting to really shine through here. Starting to build up these layers, getting a little bit darker where I need to. I've got a lot of nice middle tones and different things in there that are working, but I want to be mindful and careful not to overdo some of these little shapes. How's everybody doing? If you're painting, then I know you're painting, but if you're watching and you just have questions, definitely let's hear it. Depending on, you know, how much time you've spent kind of working with this type of thing. You know, with my members that are out there, I know that many of them are already have spent a good bit of time painting already before I started working with them, but since I've got new folks out there, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with everybody. So if you got anything you want to ask as we go, definitely do it. All right, so what I'm doing now, I'm just kind of coming in and adding a few blocks of color in places where I need a little bit of more mid-tone, but it's also sort of this greenish color. And if you will notice, you know, my painting has not taken off and gotten as dark as the photo. I see a few little orange, some little trees out there. This must be a summer scene because there's a few little things trying to turn orange here and there. So maybe this is the end of the summer type of thing. All right, I'm getting back into some more dark green here. This is really dark right over here on this side, up under this canopy. I really want to dig into that and really get that dark up under there. And it's also dark over here. Now, if you see, I'm just kind of making some big, you know, some big marks. There's some beautiful little limbs and things. I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit. Some of those limbs aren't really coming out maybe quite as far as that, but I want to kind of play with it a little bit. And there's actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. I've got, you know, in the photo there's this beautiful wash of this beam of light sort of coming through. And so what I think I might like to do with that, I'm just taking, this is my bigger brush. I don't want it to be sopping wet, but I'm going to come in here and just add, I'm tilting my board too. I'm just coming in with a little bit of water. And kind of brushing across that area. And then very carefully I want to sort of blot where I got that wet just then, because it's just going to lift up a little bit. See how I just got, how I just had a little beam of light just sort of come rushing in. Now I just put a little bit of water on it, not too much, and I didn't scrub or anything like that. I just laid the water in and then immediately went in and blotted in the shape that I wanted. And you have to make sure too that you know, when you do something like that, that the underlying pigment is a little bit damp, otherwise it's going to be, you know, a little bit too dry, and then you'd have to scrub a little bit, and that's going to create a whole different maybe scenario, and we're not really looking for that. So I'm kind of happy with that little detail there. I'm going to get into some yellow. If you notice, the tree is very, very backlit over here. There's lots of yellow. And so I'm using my Hansa yellow, coming in here. See how that's just adding so much of that glow and warmth. And I'm not drawing the shape of any kind of leaf or anything like that. I'm just kind of adding just a little bit of that color, that yellow coming in there. And let's see, what else do I want to do? I want to keep this fresh. This is the part of the painting where you kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, I could just I could keep going because it's kind of fun, but at the same time, I may be thinking, do I really want to go that far? So I think what I want to do, this little background, the mountain that, or not a mountain, but a row of trees that's way off in the distance, I think I want to add just a little bit of value. I'm using, again, my, my rare green earth. And if you want to kind of make a custom mix of rare green earth, it's made with some Hansa yellow and ultramarine, ultramarine blue. And there's a little bit of Quin gold in it as well, so it's, kind of 3 colors in one. But I tell anybody when I'm using this color, it's easier to just go by the color. You'll thank yourself. It'll be so worth it. All right, there we go. All right, I think I might stop there. We've gone, a pretty good ways. There's some more that I could do to build up, and in fact, I think I will sprinkle just a little bit of salt onto the tree where it's a little bit wet, and kind of let, that'll create a little bit more foliage effect too. But look how clean the lines were for the, for the shadow coming across. I didn't want to go as dark as the tree. I kind of like the tree, just, carrying those dark values sort of solo on its own. But I still have that dark value coming out of the base of the tree and making its way across the yard. And doing it in one stroke, if you possibly can, really, really makes a difference in being able to keep that just nice and fresh. I just see a need to put a little bit of that in there. Let's see. I'm wanting to do just a little bit more yellow. I may have pressed too far and can't quite get as light as I want to. I might have lost some of my lightness in there as I was working through that. But this is just an example of a very fun way to just handle a scene. And you can do this with your photograph. You can do this just by going out into the yard or go to the park, or whatever the case may be, so that you're able to just capture those scenes that are around you. They're everywhere. And work with a sketchbook if you want to. It doesn't matter. But I will tell you that it's good to practice drawing and painting from life. But if it's something that's new to you, definitely work with your photos for a while, because there is a big difference in sketching and drawing from a photo than from life, which is a whole other, we could spend another hour talking about that. We won't get into it. But I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope it was fun. I hope it was a good way for you to know how to sort of look at a photo, kind of evaluate it, and figure out, okay, what is my game plan? What am I actually trying to accomplish here? And one of the things that always comes back over and over again is going to always be value. And for my members out there, you hear this all the time, but value is everything. It's way more important than color. Okay, so you want to make sure that your lights are where they need to be, that the mediums are where they need to be, that the darks are where they need to be. And putting a little bit of framework, putting a little bit of time into a sketch underneath, that gave me a solid framework to work on. And yes, I could have worked really realistically if I wanted to. I'm from that vein. I'm cut from that cloth, and I could do that, but I have enjoyed loosening up over time. And so being able to have that framework gives me so much freedom and confidence to come in and just lay the brush strokes in, okay? And know that if I'm following, my guideline that I have established for myself, it just helps the whole painting to go so much more smoothly. And we wind up usually having something that we're, more excited to show off and enjoy enjoy looking at. So let me know if you have any questions. I want to hear from you. Christy says, Okay, Christy was just watching. It's a lovely scene. Is it a Georgia photo? No, I mean, it possibly could be. This was a photo that I snagged off of Pixabay, and if y'all are familiar with that, it's Pixabay, pixabay.com, and they have royalty-free images that you can use. So this one, it was just really beautiful. I thought this would be a perfect one to kind of work on for our session tonight, so I grabbed it there. But I'm going to kind of let this dry a little bit, but let me hold it up to you just so that, let me get myself out of here. I want you to kind of look at all of the brushwork, look at all of the loose brushwork, all of the places where I allowed the white paper to stay safe, the places where I pushed the values, and using more confident brushwork so that I don't have an overworked, stiff looking type of painting. It makes a huge difference in our brushwork, just to keep it soft, just to keep it simple and easy and flowing, all of those good things. Let's see. Robin says, lovely time, Jill. Thank you so much. Miss you. This has been awesome. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. It has been a while since we've painted together, so I'm glad that you were here. So I don't think I've got any more questions, but definitely jump into this, okay? And watch this as many times as you need to. All the videos that we're doing over the course of the training are going to be available for several days once the whole training session has concluded, okay? You're going to have some days to catch up on that. But share in the group what you've come up with. I want to see what you've got. Definitely, if you've got questions about it, let us know. And then tomorrow is our last day. Okay, it's day 6. It's a bonus day, actually. And if you have struggled with perfectionism at any point or any time in your life, you need to make sure that you don't miss the next episode. We're going to really get into that. I've got just a really unique teaching that I want to do on perfectionism. That is sort of I kind of draw it as I go, so it's sort of like a little I guess it's an illustrated description of perfectionism and what it's really doing to us, okay? And I think you'll be very encouraged to see this. Day 6 is a bonus day, so the replay for the bonus day is going to be shorter. That'll only be up for I think it's 48 hours, that one. So make sure that even if you've got to watch all the replays, go ahead and watch replay 6 first, because it'll come down first, but the others are going to be up for several days. But join me tomorrow for perfectionism. It's going to be good. And then we're also going to do just a quick little mini painting of the peony. You may have seen that already. We're gonna knock that out tomorrow too, because I want to show you some nice and fun textures using some really nice contrasting cool colors. So let's see. Elizabeth, thank you for tonight. Lots of notes to process before I paint. Absolutely. This was fun. I hope that you enjoy it. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Post it in the group, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.